Well, anybody who knows me knows I'm not going to turn down a chance to talk into a microphone. I think Jacob would be awfully confused if I did, and I think the world's turned upside down more than it already has this year. I did prepare a lot of things, and it's funny because it's so much of the same of what we've already heard about Jacob, but that just shows how truthful it is, and just how much of an impact he's had on us. And I'm going to do my best to make it through this as well as I can. So I'll ask that you bear with me a couple times, and we'll get through it together. But Jacob stood out. This whole week I've been trying to think. It's just been going through my mind, like all of us. And there's so many stories and so many things. And how do you organize it all into one rational thought so I'm not standing up here rambling? And Jacob stood out. That's what I kept coming back to. He stood out in size. He was huge. I don't know what happened. One day I saw him. The next day I'm looking way up. But he was a giant. But he was our gentle giant. And while he towered above most, there was nothing scary or intimidating about Jacob. And not even in looking at him. He was the giant that you could look at and you just knew, like, that guy. There's this. He was, everything about him was just outward and for everybody else. And he used his size to his advantage, and not only his, but everybody else's advantage. I needed some help a few years ago. My wife and I bought a bedroom furniture set up by Toledo, and I needed some help loading it in a truck. So Jacob helped me, and I watched him pick up. I learned that day what a sweater chest was. If you're not sure, it's a tall, thin dresser. And I saw him pick it up and put it on the bed, the truck, and then he hopped up in there and laid it down flat, and that was cool. And so when I got home later and I went to unload it, I get in the truck and I lift it up and I go to pick it up and set it down, and that wasn't happening. And that was the day I learned Jacob not only surpassed me in strength, but doubled, maybe tripled me. But without him that day, I would have been lost. And it was just a phone call away. But he used his size, not just to help people, but to inspire joy and have fun. And my son's not here today, but he spent more time on the ceiling of my mom's house than anybody. And every single time that happened, Jacob sang Spider Pig from the Simpsons movie. So, that's the kinds of things that Jacob would do. And he was that giant, and he knew what to do and how to use that size. Not to scare people, not to do anything, but to just bring people together, bring joy, and to help. He stood out with his laugh. That's a heck of a laugh. And just like Jacob, the laugh was big, loud, and a little bit goofy. Every part of it, but that was his laugh. And he was voted best laugh in high school for a reason, and I'm sure if they held an all-century team for best laugh, I think he would still get it. But I've got to be honest, his laugh wasn't always welcomed. When I was 15 and he would have been 8, I spent the summer watching them. And every time something came up about a question, more often than not, it was, where's the remote? But where is, and insert anything. And the answer was, up your butt and around the corner, followed by that damn laugh. And that drove me nuts. But I tell you, those words are in my brain. They always have been. And I can't help but think of Jacob. But he would laugh every single time. And, that joke was always there. But more often than not, his laugh wasn't just welcomed, but it came at just the right times. And it had just the right mojo to turn around a bad day, or to offer, at the very least, just a brief respite to the daily stresses of life. And I think if he heard himself laugh more, then I think he could have realized that. But it wasn't about Jacob. It was always about everybody else. And so he never got to enjoy that laugh that we did. And I think we should hold that in our hearts forever. It was mentioned earlier, we talk about him laughing, but what about us laughing? The elevator and the escalator, and I appreciate you sharing that story, but unless you've been there, you really can't say what it was, because it was the funniest thing that you'll ever see in your life. And his routine was the same every time. You think new material? No, not Jake. Same routine, just as funny. I can't tell you the evenings, the afternoons, the times that we spent together, as a family, just watching Jacob go down the escalator, come up an escalator. He did his elevator and everything. But I can tell you, you see it in the movie and you hear the cliches of doing that. But Jacob always checked his watch. He always did every one of those. And that escalator and that elevator, that's one of the very first things that I thought of when I found out that Jacob wasn't with us anymore. And that thought was, he took that escalator ride up. And it's a tough place for us to kind of be, but he certainly earned it. And those memories are always going to be envisioned into my brain. And I'm always every time I see that escalator, I see an elevator or something, it's going to be Jacob that comes to my mind without fail. But we're going to miss his laugh, and we're going to miss his ability to draw it out of us too. But I know Jacob would want us to continue laughing, whether at him, with him. It didn't matter. He's going to want us to continue laughing. But where Jacob stood out the most was with his kindness. He was a giant. He was huge, but his heart was 10 times bigger. And you're not going to hear anything different from anybody that's here. I think what was said was there's not one person here that he hasn't helped out. And I think that's the absolute truth. When I called him saying, hey, I need some help loading some furniture, there was no question about it. There was no, let me check my schedule and see what I'm doing that day. It was, let me know what you need. He was always there. He had a work ethic that is unrivaled. And he transferred that work ethic to whether it was any job that he had or if he was just helping you out. And I think the harder the work, the more he liked it. And he appreciated that. And it's something that we can always appreciate in him. The big thing with Jake is, when he cared about you, you knew it. When he hugged you, you felt every ounce of love that he had in that giant body of his. And those hugs are one of the things I'm going to miss the most. And he was a hugger, and he was a kisser. And Ashley, I'm going to talk to you for just a moment here, if I may. When you're feeling down, when you're feeling just hurt and that pain, think of him kissing Grandma with his open mouth. Just picture that in your brain, because that's gotten me through this week with him. Now, mind you, he had a few beers. Wait, we already agreed inappropriate was okay, right? But he had a few beers, and he went to say bye to Grandma and give her a kiss, and the mouth seemed to open just a little bit, and everybody around saw it, and it was very awkward, and I don't know, we told him about it, and he laughed. He didn't get embarrassed. He thought it was hilarious. So just think of that, because I don't know if there's anything that can pull you out of the feeling down than the thought of that. Oh my goodness.
Awkward.
But, as I get ready to kind of finish, and I hope I'm not taking up too much time, but, 17 years ago, we lost our grandfather. And that was a day that Jacob lost one of his best friends. Jacob and Grandpa were very close, and they had a connection that none of us had with Grandpa. And however that came about, that's awesome. And in that 17 years, it's been, tough for all of us in a lot of different ways, but as much as I'm hurting right now, and as much all of us are, and we're, thinking about us, we think about Jacob, and he's not hurting right now. And I'm pretty sure, I want to believe that right now he's standing with Grandpa, his arm around Grandpa, because Grandpa wasn't that tall, his arm around Grandpa, and he's been telling Grandpa how much we all love him and how much we all miss him. And my hope is that Jacob knows that we love him no more, no less, and we're going to miss him just as much. And I just want to kind of finish by saying something that's, I think, maybe a little personal. A lot of this has been, but when we lost Grandpa, we learned that Grandpa was kind of a glue that held our family together. And my hope is that Jacob can be the glue that brings us back together. And now's the time to let any wounds that heal and to be there for each other and to help each other, because that's what we need, and Jacob would want nothing less than that. So as I finish up, I just have to say, Jacob, I love you. I'm going to miss you, and your spirit is going to live with me forever. And in case you're ever curious of where that spirit's living, it's up your butt and around the corner.